and welcome back to my channel. I read 32 books in the month of May, which is kind of crazy because I completely packed up my home and moved an hour away and unpacked my home all within that month, so don't really understand how I read this much, but let's go into my May reading wrap-up. We're gonna go genre by genre. I read a few fantasy, a handful of thrillers, a handful of romance, and a couple like miscellaneous, one poetry, one contemporary fiction, but let's start with the fantasy sci-fi. The very first book I read this month actually was A Swift and Sudden Exit, which is a queer, sapphic, sci-fi time travel book, and this was done so phenomenally well. It follows this woman named Zara who's traveling back in time to 2040. She's trying to investigate the geomagnetic storm that caused the destruction of the Earth, but instead what she goes and finds is this woman who is dying, and in her dying breath she says, "Is this the first time we've met?" So now not only is Zara trying to chase down these storms that caused the ending of the world, but she's also trying to chase down this mysterious woman who claims to have known her and seems to actually be immortal. So she's going back in all these different years, and their love story that's developed in this book was done so well. It had me grinning and kicking my feet. Definitely love this one. Next up we have Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and I am mad at myself for not reading this one sooner. Like, somebody needed to hit me over the head with this book until I read it, because why did I have this on my shelf for literally years before picking this one up? I adored this one so very much. This has everything that you want in a YA like dystopian fantasy book. It reminded me of all those great books that you love when you're younger, like Hunger Games, Divergent. I've recently read Shatter Me and I felt that same way about that series. This is just like that. It had all those aspects that you love, but also with its own twists and turns that kept me on my toes in the best of ways. In this book, the world is divided into classes based on your blood. So there's red and there's silver, and the silver elite are the ones who have powers and they control everything, and the reds are like the lowly. So in this book we follow Mare and her family who are reds, and she is desperately trying to figure out a way to get her best friend back who is getting sent off to war. She ends up kind of gambling with fate. It takes her to the palace where she ends up discovering a power that she has despite being a red. Now the king wants to hide that this is a thing. He doesn't want anyone to know that she has a power being a red, so he decides to make her basically like a silver princess in their palace. She's betrothed to one of the king's sons, but she's also working with this like rebel group to try to overturn the silvers. This book was done so well. I also did read the novella after this, and this one I did not love. I thought that this was not very necessary. I wasn't really interested in this one, although I know that's an unpopular opinion. I think a lot of people love this, but for me it was just a miss. Then I read River of Shadows, and this one was also not my favorite. I thought this had some good aspects, but overall it wasn't my cup of tea. It is like a dark, almost Beauty and the Beast type of retelling. It's not directly retelling, but it's, I think, definitely inspired by that. I read this at the beginning of the month and it didn't fully stick with me, but if I remember correctly, it's about this woman who is basically going to her father's funeral, and when she gets there, she's told that her father isn't actually in that casket, and he isn't. His body's not there, and they're telling her that he actually is alive, so she's going on this journey to try to find him, and ends up discovering that he's been taken by like the god of death. And I think it has some sort of like she takes his place and stays with the god of death instead, and then there's like that weird romance, and it just, again, I liked the concept. I just thought it could have been executed better. I also read A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed, and this one was a long time coming. I had this on my TBR for months in a row and just was not picking it up, so I'm very happy to have finally read this one. I did really enjoy this one. It wasn't like my very favorite fantasy by any means, but I am really excited for book 2. This one follows our main character Effie, who's always been very fascinated by something called the Fairy King, and she kind of loses herself in this story about this mortal girl who falls in love with the Fairy King and then destroys him. And she's working on a degree at this very prestigious architecture college, and the thing that like gets her through it is her tattered old copy of this book that she really loves. Now, while she's in her semester, the family of the author of this book that she cherishes so much announces this contest to redesign that person's estate. The author has since passed, and she thinks this is like the perfect opportunity for her. Again, she is in architecture college, and this is the book that she's cherished for forever, so she jumps right on that. So she goes to the manor. It's really old and decrepit, and kind of a very difficult task, not what she was expecting when she got there. When she gets there, it gets a little complicated because who's also at that house is this guy named Preston, who is determined to prove to her that the author that she loves so much is actually a fraud. This is about two rival students. It's a really fun YA fantasy. Again, I can't wait for the next book. And lastly for fantasy, we have Miscellaneous, which I did really enjoy. This is like a Mexican mythology retelling type of book. It definitely has some darker themes to it, so check the content warnings if you're gonna read this one, but it's done in a way that, in my opinion, comes together beautifully. It has purpose for those darker topics. At its core, its message is about survival and resilience, which I thought was really beautiful, as well as like sisterhood in general. I got this one from the author, and it came with this beautiful handmade bookmark that I am obsessed with. Let's see if it'll focus. Like, look at how stunning that is. I will cherish this forever. It was hand painted. It's made off of this like I don't even know what material, but I just think it's stunning. Moving right along, let's go on to thrillers next. I have a pretty hefty stack of thrillers that I read this month. We'll start with The Collective by Allison Galen. This book was so good. It's another one that I had on my TBR for way too long, and I'm mad at myself now for putting it off this long because this was phenomenal. Now this one's a tale of revenge. It's about this mother who lost her daughter like 5 years ago and she cannot move on from it. It's all she thinks about. She wants justice to come to the boy that she completely blames for her daughter's death. Now because of how loud she's being about how much she wants justice, she ends up being approached by this group of women that's very secretive. It's called The Collective. It's on like the dark web, and it starts out to her being something that everybody's just talking about their grief, and it's a safe place to wish ill on the person that caused the death of your family member. So it's like a safe place to chat and be like, I wish this happened to them, and they'll all agree and support you. But what she doesn't realize until she's getting deeper is that these women actually carry out those threats. So they not only are just fantasizing about these different tales of revenge, but they actually enact them. It really calls into question how far she really would go for the revenge that she believes she wants. I love this book. It kept me so on my toes. The way this was written was done so well that I could not put this one down. I read 2 books by Alex Finley this month. We have Parents Weekend and The Night Shift. I listened to both of these on audio. This one was for free on Macmillan's podcast called Case Closed. The Night Shift is definitely my favorite of the 2. I gave that one, I think, 5 stars, and then this one was a little bit lower, but I thought they were both amazing. Parents Weekend follows a small private college in North Carolina, and it is Parents Weekend there, so they're all on campus and excited to spend the time with their students. There's 5 of the students' families who are all gathering for dinner, and the students haven't shown up yet. The parents are still thinking like, it's just college students, they're probably out late, they'll come join us when they can, so they're spending the evening together, kind of revealing some secrets about themselves too. The students never show up, which is when the parents are starting to freak out about what happened to them. They're nowhere to be found. So we have an investigator come in that's actually in both of these books, and she's trying to uncover what happened to these students, but also delving into those secrets that she is finding between those families. Now, The Night Shift follows these 2 seemingly unconnected murders that happened like 15 years apart. And the first one was at this like video rental store. Now, a few younger girls were killed during this one, and now it's 15 years later, and it seems like it's connected. The way that the murders were done, they seem to be connected, so the same investigator is trying to figure out the connection despite it seeming so random and the person from 15 years ago having been caught. Loved both of these, but again, The Night Shift takes the cake for me. I adored Run Unread. This was my first book by this author. It certainly won't be my last. I am obsessed. If you like Frida's style of writing where it's like a popcorn thriller, crazy things are happening from like literally page 1, then this is going to be a book for you. I was packing my house listening to the audiobook of this one and seriously could not stop listening to it. I got so much done that day because I listened to it completely straight through. I took no breaks. I just had to know what was happening next. This one follows these 2 college-age girls. They're headed to, I think it was like a party, and they're on these rural roads, and they're starting to realize there's these headlights behind them that seem to be following them. They're starting to get a little bit uneasy about it. They think at first it's probably just road rage, but by the time they realize they're in trouble, it seems like it's too late for them. They have no phone service. Their car is really old and not as fast as this car behind them that's trying to like run them off the road and do crazy things. There were so many times in this book that I thought they were doomed. Like, I cannot believe that she was able to pull this off so well that it actually made sense why they were able to be okay. Obviously, you know your main characters. This isn't a horror. This is a thriller. So you know your main characters are going to be fine in this book. But the whole time I was like, there's no way they're getting out of this one. And they did. And I thought it was done so well. I can't wait to read more from this author. I also read my first Peter Swanson book, and this is another one I put off reading for way too long for no reason. This one is so fun. It follows this newlywed librarian who starts to suspect that her new husband might actually be a serial killer. So she enlists the help of one of her old friends that she hasn't talked to actually in a long time. She's somebody who helped her out in the past when she was dealing with a guy she was dating that she needed kind of an out from. It wasn't going well and she needed to get out of that situation. So she knows that this is a trusted friend who will help her, and they're trying to uncover whether her husband actually is a serial killer, but they're doing it quietly because she doesn't want to raise this suspicion to him, because if she's wrong, like, that's relationship ruining, and if she's right, then she's confronting a serial killer with like nobody around. So she's very delicate in the way she's handling this, but I love this. The twists in this one were so amazing. I also did a reread of The Woman in Cabin 10 and my read through of The Woman in Suite 11, which is the next book in this, like, I guess it's the sequel of this book, and this one comes out in July, and I adored this one. This is one of my very favorite books ever. It's the book that got me into reading in the first place. I do have a reading vlog where I read through both of these if you want to check that one out. But The Woman in Cabin 10 is about this journalist who is going on this like small maiden voyage cruise ship with a bunch of other influential people. It's like the career break that she's dreamed of. But on that first night when she's there, in the middle of the night, she thinks she witnesses somebody get thrown overboard. Now the problem was she was drinking that night, so nobody really believes her, especially when everybody on the ship is accounted for. There are only a handful of guests on board. It is a very small voyage, so she is spending the rest of the time trying to figure out what happened, but also realizing that the more she is causing a stir here, the more she's putting herself in danger, because the killer has to be on board with her. Now this one picks up 10 years later, and I thought this was done so well. This is like a cat and mouse chase across Europe, and the 10-year age jump was done amazingly, and there's also a lot of characters that were in this book that come up again in this one. Characters you love, characters you hate, characters that you love to hate. Like, it was a blast reading this one. And then next up, I read 2 Frida books. I actually read this one twice. This was what my podcast group was doing an episode on, and I love this. I have had kind of a hit or miss relationship with Frida's recent books. She's been publishing a lot, and some of them are amazing and some of them are just falling flat for me, but this one did not fall flat. I thought this was done so amazingly well. It reminded me of a lot of her older thriller books in the best of ways. Now this one follows Blake, who was recently let go from like his dream job, and him and his fiance are struggling to make their mortgage payments on their house in New York City. So they decide that they're going to take in a tenant to help make ends meet, and the person they choose seems to be okay at first, but then crazy things start happening, and this book is so unhinged and has like the shortest chapters, so you just absolutely fly through it. I definitely recommend this one. The other Frida book I read was Brain Damage, and this was okay. This is definitely one of her older books, and I thought for it being an old Frida, it was done pretty well. It didn't have like that crazy twist that you expect from her older books. I kind of thought the ending fell flat, but overall it was entertaining and I did enjoy it. Moving right along to romance books, I actually had 3 different F1 romance books. The first one is Not So Fast. This was my favorite of the 3 that I read. We also have Overdrive, which I did enjoy as well, and Pole Position, which was a queer F1 romance. I think my favorite was Not So Fast, followed by Pole Position, and then Overdrive, but both of these ones kind of like left my brain as soon as I was done reading them. It sometimes happens to me with romance where I'm enjoying it as I read it, and then I just like don't think about it again afterwards, and therefore I don't remember it even a little bit. So could I give you a synopsis of either of these? No. I know that this one was about this girl who was like making a race simulator, and she was going and testing it with this like F1 driver, and they have romance. That's about all I got for you on the premise of that one. This one, I guess I remember a little bit about these. This one's about 2 teammates that are kind of like an enemies to lovers situation. One of them I think was the son of like an influential driver, but he doesn't really want anything to do with that reputation, and then the other one's like an up and coming driver, and I think it's like a forced proximity situation. Again, I enjoyed it while I read it, and then it just left my brain. The one I did enjoy the most was Not So Fast, and this one stuck with me a little bit more. This follows a woman who's a huge F1 fan, and she decided to start a podcast, and she went viral for this clip where she is talking about this racer, and she's kind of dissing him like very heavily, and her podcast went viral. She's now very popular and influential, and she was invited to this race by a different racer to be like his guest at the race, and she was thrilled about this, except that also meant she's running into this guy that she is like famous for hating on. Now she doesn't actually dislike him, she was just being very critical of like one of his drives, and so they meet and they actually have like sparks right away. They have quite the connection and end up with a kind of like secret relationship, but I loved this one. It was so cute. Another romance that I absolutely loved was 32 Days in May. This one has amazing chronic illness representation in it. It follows a woman who was recently diagnosed with lupus, and she kind of wants to get a handle on her life again, and she decides she wants to attempt a no-strings fling with this like actor guy. She's going back to like the place that her family always vacationed in the summer, and she decides part of this is that she's not going to tell him she has lupus. They're only going to be like dating for a month during May, which is great and fine and dandy until they fall for each other and have feelings, but she realizes she wasn't honest with him because of her diagnosis. And I thought this both was a really cute romance, but also dealt with those heavier topics and did it flawlessly. Next up we have Summer in the City by Alex Astor, and I enjoyed this one up until like the last probably quarter of the book, and then I just thought it fell off a little bit. I feel like Alex Astor is still learning how to write romance. She is a fantasy author, I believe. She has a YA trilogy that I've heard is really good. I haven't read it yet, but this one she was doing so good, and then I think she just packed like way too much in the last like third. I think there was an unnecessary third act breakup in this one, which always gets on my nerves, and overall just fell a little bit flat for me at the end, but I did enjoy this book. I just wish the ending was different. Now this one follows a screenwriter who has writer's block, and she decides to go back to New York City even though she swore that she'd never go there again to try to get inspiration for her next screenwriting. When she gets there, she realizes that her new neighbor is actually like this tech CEO that she had a fling with forever ago and doesn't like anymore. So this is kind of like a lovers to enemies to lovers again trope, which was interesting and I thought done pretty well. Then I read both The Spare, and I think the second book is called The Heir, of this like biotech billionaire series, and I enjoyed this quite a lot. Like I had a lot of fun with these books, and I can't wait to read the third one. Now this one's a bit of a sibling rivalry situation. It follows Sloane, who is one of the kids of this very influential family. She's always spent her life in like the shadow of her older brother, but she's determined to come out of this. She wants to prove herself to be the heir of the family company. This is also a brother's best friend romance. There's a lot of fun like dynamics in this book that I thought were done really well. I don't have my copy on hand of The Heir, but I really like this one too. They're all like interconnected standalones, so you can read them in any order, but you're gonna see like little snapshots of the different characters in each of the books that you read. Next up we have 2 books that I read in the complete wrong order. So this is a book in a series, I think it's book number number 2, and I read this one first, and I haven't read the other books yet, but I loved it. And I think this one's book number 3 actually, and I also didn't check this. I just like pulled them off my shelf and read them without looking them up on Goodreads and seeing that this was number 3 and this was number 2, but oh well, I still love them nonetheless. This one's called A Lot Like Adios, and this one is a queer romance. It follows these 2 like old best friends who had like a falling out. They haven't talked to each other in a long time, but they end up working together on like a work project. He owns a gym and she does like marketing, and she had a really successful marketing campaign that inspired him and his company to want to reach out to her to help them with their marketing. And so he goes into the city to spend some time with her to brainstorm, and they of course have old feelings catch up to them. Now this one, I didn't know this either, but this is like a Shakespeare inspired rom-com trilogy, and again, this is the 3rd book, so don't be like me, read them in order. But this one's like a friends to lovers. It's like an accidental but sort of real marriage, which is a very interesting trope I had never read before. The chemistry between the characters in this one was so good though, I absolutely loved it. I did not enjoy Room Hate by Penelope Ward. This one like had me shocked that people like this. I feel like this had a lot of problematic things in it, and the way that the male main character acted and treated the FMC and the things that he said like gave me the ick to an extreme. I did not enjoy it. There were a few redeeming aspects of this book, but not enough to give this like a high rating. I kind of completed this book just out of spite. Like I kind of wanted to just keep reading it be terrible, and it really didn't get much better as I went, so not a huge fan of this one. I also read Once Upon You and Me, which is a really cute queer age gap romance. This one follows this guy who is like the co-owner with his ex-wife of this like resort that has like weddings at it. It's like a wedding venue. It's called the Storybook Endings Resort, and he is on a mission because it is his daughter's 16th birthday coming up, and so he is working with his ex-wife to give her like the birthday party of her dreams. So Amy isn't like on site, and so she sends her assistant Taylor to help with the preparation for the Sweet 16, and that is where the romance comes in. It's a bit of an age gap and a kind of a forbidden romance because Amy, the ex-wife, would like absolutely hate knowing that there's something going on, and it might put his job on the line, so they're keeping this a secret, but they're having quite the like, fling together, and it was so cute. Then I read Love Naturally, and I like this one. It wasn't my very favorite, but I picked this one up because it is set in Michigan, which I did like that aspect. It follows this woman who books this trip to Michigan for her boyfriend. She knows that he really likes fishing, and she thinks it's gonna be the perfect trip to take the relationship to the next level, but when she gives it to him as a birthday present, he basically implies that he'd rather go with someone else, that he doesn't want like to actually go with her. He's thankful for the trip, but he wants to go with like a friend instead. And so she freaks out and she's like, you know what, never mind, like I'm just gonna go by myself and have my own trip, even though this type of like outdoorsy fishing trip is like not up her alley normally at all. She's like an influencer girly, and she's going basically almost camping. But when she gets there, she meets this guy named Beckett, who his family is the one who owns this like resort that she's staying at, and so he kind of helps her get comfortable in this new environment that she is not normally comfortable with and try out new things that she otherwise wouldn't, and they end up with the romance. And again, I thought it was cute, just wasn't my favorite. Lastly, for romance, we have Crash Landing, which was a phenomenal second chance romance. I love this one. It follows 2 exes who are headed to a mutual friend's wedding. It was a destination wedding, and the plane gets canceled. She doesn't even know that he was invited, so at the airport it is a huge surprise when she runs into him and is offered a ride by him. He has a friend, I think he's a pilot, and he's a friend who offers like their small plane that he is going to be able to take to the wedding so that he doesn't miss it, and he is offering her a ride there too. But the only problem is they, I think, run into like a storm and end up crashing on this small little island in the middle of nowhere. They have, of course, no like cell service, no ability to contact anybody, so they're relying on each other for survival, and they have those feelings come back from when they were together way back when, and I thought this was so cute. I loved it. Alright, time for like the 3 miscellaneous books. I at first had this in the romance section, and I don't even know what this fits in as. It's called One Italian Summer, and I wanted to like this one a whole lot more than I did. I found a lot of the characters insufferable. They made choices that made me so very angry. I don't think most of the characters in this book are good people. So I don't love reading books when I don't like the characters, and this one was definitely like that. It follows a woman whose mom dies, and her mom was like the most important person in her life, so she is devastated. She decides she wants to take the trip to Italy that her and her mom planned to go to together, and she also decides just on a whim that like her mom was basically her soulmate. She loved her more than she loves her husband, so she's gonna leave her husband behind and tell him that like she doesn't even know if she wants to be with him. She's just gonna go to Italy and see what happens, which was insane. But anyway, she goes to Italy and she finds herself set back in time to when her mom was there, like all those years ago. It's somewhere her mom loved and visited a long time ago. So she jumps back in time, meets her mother from the past, and I'll just leave you there. She makes horrible decisions while she's there, in my opinion, and again, just not very many good people in this book. It was kind of a bit of a frustrating read for me. Then I read Goldenrod, which was a really enjoyable book of poetry. Don't have a lot to say on this one. If you like poems, I do recommend this one. And lastly, we have The Family Recipe, which was a good read. I haven't read this author's other book, The Fortunes of Jaded Women, but I certainly will after reading this one. This one follows this family who is working for an inheritance. Their dad was like a wealthy business owner and kind of estranged from most of them, but his dad puts out, while he's alive, he puts out this competition that only one of them is actually going to get the inheritance. And basically the son in the family has to get married within like a year or something, and the daughters have to take one of his struggling sandwich shops and revamp it to be successful, and whoever does that the best in that year wins the inheritance. But if the son gets married within that time, then he gets it all anyways. So you're following all these different family members with a lot of different dynamics, and I definitely enjoyed this one. Alright, and that was all of them. Again, a really incredible reading month. I was shocked to read this many books this month because of how busy the month was. We did move in May, so a lot of these were in audiobooks while I was packing and unpacking our boxes, but overall just such a fun month. I highly recommend almost all of these, so hope you guys could take some good book recs from this one. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these and enjoyed them, and I'll see you guys in the next video.